Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by silver rivers and whispering woods, lived two sisters, one kind, one cruel. They were as different as sunlight and storm. The elder, Clarice, was beautiful but vain, her heart as cold as her reflection in the mirror she adored. The younger, Isabel, was plain but gentle, with eyes that carried the warmth of the hearth. Their widowed mother favored Clarice, showering her with fine dresses and endless praise, while Isabel was left to toil at the well and in the fields. One day, when Isabel went to fetch water, she met a weary old woman who begged for a drink. Isabel, though tired and hungry, offered her the last drop she had. The woman drank, smiled softly, and revealed herself to be a fairy. "Because your heart is pure," she said, "every word you speak will bring forth a gift, roses, pearls, and diamonds." From that moment, Isabel's kindness sparkled quite literally. Every gentle word dropped a gem. But when Clarice heard of this, jealousy consumed her. She went to the well sneering, determined to earn the same gift. When the fairy appeared again in the guise of a beggar, Clarice spat, mocked, and demanded riches. The fairy's eyes turned to flame. "Your heart is poison," she said coldly, "and so shall be your tongue. From your mouth shall fall toads and serpents." And so began a story of light and darkness, of kindness rewarded and vanity cursed. A story that would haunt a mother, ruin a daughter, and prove that true beauty is never born of mirrors, but of mercy. Clarice and Isabel grew up under the same roof, but in entirely different worlds. Their cottage was modest, surrounded by wildflowers and humming bees, but to Clarice it was a prison. She longed for silks, perfumes, and noble attention. She despised the chores that dirtied her hands. Isabel, however, found joy in simplicity. She sang while she worked, feeding stray cats and gathering herbs for their mother. Their mother, proud and bitter since their father's death, poured all affection into Clarice. "Beauty brings fortune," she often said, turning from Isabel's dusty dress with a sigh. The favoritism deepened Clarice's cruelty. She mocked Isabel's plain looks and laughed when her sister cried. Isabel never retaliated. She only whispered prayers that her sister might one day be kind. One evening, the mother demanded Isabel fetch water, though the sun had nearly set. Clarice smirked as her sister took the empty jug and walked alone into the forest. The air was cool, the crickets chirped, and the moon rose silver above the well. That's where destiny waited. By the time Isabel reached the well, her hands trembled with exhaustion. As she filled her jug, an old woman appeared, leaning on a crooked stick. Her eyes were kind yet sorrowful. "Child," she said, "may I have a drink?" Isabel didn't hesitate. She knelt, offered her water, and smiled. "Drink as much as you wish, grandmother." The old woman drank, straightened, and with a shimmer of light, transformed into the fairy of the spring. "Your heart is rare," she said softly. "May kindness flow from your lips as gems flow from the earth." From that night on, every kind word Isabel spoke shimmered into jewels. Isabel returned home, unaware of her miracle. When she greeted her mother, 2 diamonds dropped to the floor. Her mother gasped, eyes wide with greed. "Where did these come from?" she demanded. Isabel, startled, told her the story. As she spoke, more gems and roses fell from her lips. Her mother's shock turned to delight, not for her daughter's goodness, but for the wealth it promised. "Clarice!" she cried. "Do you hear that? Your sister's words are worth gold. Go to the well and do the same." Clarice's jealousy burned like fire. She refused to believe that Isabel's kindness had brought this gift. "It must be trickery," she hissed. But the glimmer of diamonds convinced her otherwise. The next morning, Clarice dressed in her finest gown and stomped to the well. The forest was quiet, almost warning her. When she arrived, the same old woman appeared, frail and thirsty. "My dear," the old woman asked gently, "may I have a sip of water?" Clarice rolled her eyes. "I am not your servant, hag. But if you'll make me rich like my fool sister, then perhaps I'll consider it." The woman's face grew solemn. "And if I do not?" Clarice sneered. "Then die of thirst for all I care." The air shimmered again, but not with warmth. The fairy's voice thundered. You who despise mercy shall speak venom. From your mouth will crawl toads and snakes until your heart learns humility. When Clarice screamed, a fat toad leapt from her lips. She tried again, another followed. Horror filled her eyes. She ran home, shrieking, her vanity shattered. The scene at home was chaos. Clarice burst through the door, sobbing as toads and slimy serpents spilled from her mouth. Her mother recoiled, screaming, "What is this witchcraft?" Isabel rushed forward, horrified, but Clarice slapped her away, crying, "This is your fault." Each insult produced more creatures, crawling and hissing across the floor. Their mother turned pale. "What did you do to her?" she demanded of Isabel. "Nothing," Isabel whispered, tears in her eyes. "The fairy punished her for cruelty." But the mother refused to believe it. She dragged Isabel by the wrist and threw her out. "Never return. You bring shame to this house." Clarice's beauty faded under the curse. Her lips were always twisted, her words trapped by fear. She avoided speaking at all, terrified of what would fall next. The villagers, hearing of her affliction, began to whisper. Children mocked her from afar, calling her the toad-tongued maiden. Meanwhile, Isabel wandered alone through the forest, heartbroken yet unbitter. The jewels she spoke now went unnoticed by her. They simply fell like tears upon the ground. The fairy watched from the shadows, sorrowful but proud. "She remains kind," the fairy murmured. "Even cast out, she shines." Clarice's mother grew desperate. The toads multiplied, the snakes invaded their cottage, and no healer could help. Regret began to pierce her greed. For the first time, she missed Isabel's gentle songs. She realized too late that she had loved beauty but not goodness. The curse, like poison, had reached her own soul. The fairy's spell was just, but merciless. Word of the sisters' strange fate spread beyond the village. One day, a young prince traveling through the forest stumbled upon Isabel as she rested by the well. Her face was tired, her clothes torn, but when she spoke, roses and pearls fell into the moss. The prince was astonished. "Who are you, maiden?" he asked gently. Isabel, blushing, told her story without pride or resentment. The prince saw not the jewels, but the purity in her eyes. "You have suffered for kindness," he said. "Let me bring you peace." He brought her to the palace, where her gentle manner won every heart. Servants adored her, and even the queen smiled when Isabel bowed humbly. Soon the prince asked her to be his bride. Isabel hesitated. "My mother and sister," she whispered. "I cannot leave them in sorrow." The prince promised to find them and make things right. When he arrived at the old cottage, he found ruin. Clarice was gaunt, her beauty eaten away by misery. Her mother, sickly and gray, wept beside her. At the sight of the prince, Clarice tried to speak, but a serpent coiled from her mouth, hissing. The mother fell to her knees. "Please," she begged, "take pity." The prince sighed. "The fairy's judgment is not mine to undo, but perhaps remorse can." He left them food, comfort, and a note from Isabel, forgiving them both. When Clarice read her sister's words, her tears fell like rain. For the first time, her sob carried no pride, only regret. And when she whispered, "Forgive me," a single pearl slipped from her lips instead of a toad. The fairy appeared once more that night, standing by Clarice's bed as moonlight streamed through the window. "You have suffered greatly," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Tell me, Clarice, what have you learned?" Clarice's eyes filled with tears. "That beauty without kindness is ugliness, that words can wound worse than any serpent, and that I would trade every mirror in the world to have my sister's heart." The fairy smiled sadly. "Your humility is the key." She waved her hand and the snakes vanished. The toads dissolved into mist. Clarice gasped. Her voice returned clean and clear. "Thank you," she whispered. From her lips fell a single rose petal. "Use it well," the fairy warned. "Kindness, once lost, is not easily found again." The next day, Clarice and her mother set out for the palace, humbled and weary. When Isabel saw them, she ran forward with open arms. "You're safe!" she cried, diamonds scattering across the marble floor. The prince, watching from the doorway, smiled at the reunion. Clarice knelt. I was cruel, selfish, and blind. Can you ever forgive me? Isabel's answer was simple. She embraced her sister tightly. We are family. That is forgiveness enough. From that day, Clarice changed. She spoke gently, helped the poor, and lived quietly beside Isabel at court. Her beauty returned, not from vanity, but from kindness reborn. The jewels from Isabel's lips ceased one day, for she needed them no longer. Years later, villagers told the tale of the sisters, one cursed by pride, one blessed by grace. Children would visit the well and drop flowers into its depths, whispering, "Kindness brings diamonds." The fairy's magic had faded, but her lesson endured. Clarice grew into a wise woman, teaching compassion to those who mocked others for being less fortunate. Isabel became queen, beloved not for her wealth but for her heart. Together they rebuilt their village, feeding the hungry and planting gardens where thorns once grew. One evening, as they sat beside the same old well,